The explosion had seemingly come from nowhere. Rocky remembered was running towards the shelves, scattering tools and throwing boxes aside like trash as he frantically searched for something to free Chase. Even though the police dog had given his final rights over the door, the mix refused to walk away, desiring to try until the very last moment to save the shepherd. Zuma's body lay on the floor, splat out as a faint trickle of blood came from his head. The Labrador had been struck hard. Rocky didn't desire to go further. He just needed the problematic dog to stay down for a few moments. Overcome with panic and anxiety, Marshall tried to say something, but his voice was given out, forcing the Dalmatian to flee for somewhere to hide. Rocky looked towards another shelf, still with a hopeful expression, when the blast happened. The walls smashed inwards, and a wave of fire violently erupted into the room. The explosion toppled the rest of the tower before they had a chance to react, the fire catching them within its surging claws. It was a while before Rocky regained consciousness, wincing as he tried to lumber himself back up, his paws scratching against the floor as he felt burnt. His fur singed with the fire screeched over him, and during the explosion that door acted as a barrier to the basement, held against the blast for only half a second before the pressure ripped it off the wall and sent it crashing into the air. Coughing out dust he tried to see through the smoke had pilfered him into the room. Liberty was next to stand, hobbling over her elongated body on 4 weak little legs. She tried to speak, but only hacked out ash and dust. Blinking her eyes, she turned her head slowly, only to come to a massive hit of shock. She jumped back at the sight of the metal object smash into the garage door, bending it inwards and opening it up outside. It was the door from earlier, erupted off its hinges, and now used to break out the garage. "Marshall!" Rocky barked, looking around the scorched room. "Are you—" "Yeah, I'm right here." The Dalmatian suddenly appeared at his side, his white fur blackened with soot. "You okay?" To Rocky's complete and absolute surprise, Marshall wasn't even a twinge afraid. He was clearly in somewhat distress as he just witnessed his home collapse. Yet for the current situation, he was oddly calm and collected. "Me?" the mix said, aghast. "What about you? You're covered in ash." "It's soot, actually. There's a difference." The Dalmatian shook himself, producing a black cloud. "These kinds of scenarios are my specialty. I'm a firefighter, remember?" He gave a confident smile. "Wait!" Liberty ran up. "Where's Zuma?" All 3 dogs looked to where the lab's body was left. To their alarm, the 4th dog had vanished without a trace. Not even a trail of paw prints could be seen, nor a blood trail. Zuma had seemingly woken up and slipped away. "We need to find him." Marshall looked to the group. "And Chase, too. He was already walking towards the dark, empty doorway." Instantly agreeing with Marshall, Liberty jumped to his support. "I agree. We gotta find the lab." Rocky was unsure. "Do we, though?" he questioned. "You saw what he did." The Dalmatian stopped in his tracks, quietly heeding his words. Marshall loved his family unconditionally, and seeing sky and rubble fall to the monster nearly shattered him. He lowered his head, whimpering, as he looked to the dark corner. The sadness within the poor dog was infectious, and Rocky lowered his ears as he sat down. "Marshall, come on." They needed to get a move on, and much as Rocky's own heart ached from leaving Chase and Zuma behind, the nightmare wasn't over. "Look, the garage door has been broken open." He pointed his tail towards it. A small coughing puffed out of him. "Let's just go." "No!" Marshall stood firmly. "I'm not leaving Chase or Zuma down there." "We aren't leaving, just getting out of here," the mix tried to reason. "Out of the smoke, at least." Despite his reluctance, Marshall eventually relented with a sigh of adaptation in his eyes. His mood was rather read easily by the grayer brother, and Rocky held out his paw with compassion in his eyes, as the 2 of them turned to escape the basement. Finally emerging outside, Liberty narrowed her eyes. Her work wasn't yet done. He thought he was dead. Chase and Varrock's mouths shared a room that sparked into flames, consuming the entire basement and tower in mere seconds. Both the puppy and creature were within an eye of the storm, their bodies almost incinerated by the blast. Yet upon painfully opening his eyes to the ruined, charred room, he did realize he was still alive. He woke up screaming in agony. Ah! His body was blistered and burned over. Patches of his fur and skin peeled away to pink soft layer. There was not a word imaginable for the pain he felt, as his first breaths he took seemed to scrape the interior of his lungs. As a scream forced out of the air in his body, he began hyperventilating each and every breath, bringing out the smaller scream with it. He was alive. What horrid deity above he had denied him the chance to die? How much would he be forced to suffer? His mind was long broken, and now his body as well. Perhaps he would never have the chance to rest. He couldn't be alive. The smoke should have infested his lungs and suffocate him, for him to be spared. Something had to have broken through the basement, creating a hole on the outside where the smoke could escape. And if such a place was created, it meant that the chance had to escape was outside, or maybe it was the garage, a sign that it was opened and waiting for him. "Wait, what? There!" He cried out in a scratchy voice. "Where am I?" His heart and lungs still erratically pounding away, the sound of settling metal creaking above him. The entire room caved in, the ceiling bursting open like boil, spilling various metals and building foundation to meet the melting doom of the fires. The inferno was gone, however, only leaving behind the festering burns on his body and a room covered in ash and soot. A part of him wanted to lie down and stay there, giving up his life with all the agony it presented. Only the back of his mind did know that there was still a chance, an opportunity to reunite with his family, praying that Varrock's Miles wasn't buried and incinerated from the blast. Chase flexed his paws first, his front left trying to feel its articulation. After some painful movement testing, he concluded all of his limbs and joints were fine, although cooked medium rare from the fire. Unable to suppress his pain, the dog audibly let out several groans and cries as he pushed himself up. To stay hurt to walk, it was an understatement. His entire right paw was peeled pink of top of its layer. "Okay," he staggered, trying to slow his heart rate. "Oh, okay." A loudly emitted a groan. He took a step forward. After taking that moment, he remembered vaguely where he was, the communication room. Gritting his teeth at the pain, he began making his way towards the exit, limping slowly, walking out into the hallway, stepping over the fallen metal and burned drywall. His eyes widened as the damage was revealed. The blast had almost completely incinerated Varrock's Miles' nest. The walls of flesh and gore burned into ash and revealing the real basement walls behind. It was refreshing to see the corridors end of the empty infection finally, and even the eggs were gone, not with a trace of them in sight. Perhaps Zuma hadn't failed after all. Walking in his direction of the garage, Chase stopped in the middle of this hallway. His path was blocked at the top, ceiling shattered and collapsed into debris. First believing he was trapped, he lowered his eyes and emitted a painful whine until he remembered the vents. With Varrock's Miles' infection gone, the ceiling vents were finally uncovered and unclogged of the biomass. All Chase needed to do was vent an entrance, and he'd have to backtrack for one. "All right, then," he growled, his right leg quivering as he tried to stand. "So be it." Sharply turning on his path, he faced away and walked in the other direction, scanning his eyes along the bare wall for a vent opening. He turned his nose away at the disgusting smell of fried gore. Even while most of it was gone, it had been cooked into a disgusting stench that flooded away the hallway and its corridors. His mind raced for solutions, roadmaps, any for answer where his life should be headed. Should he escape? Even if Ryder somehow returned within the hour? A good proportion of his team was gone, and the rest scarred, and the entire tower was destroyed. Where else could they have go from there? Making a turn as he followed the hallway, he fought to each of his friends and family with remorse. He never found an apology suitable to redeem what he had done, assuming it was redeemable at all. Marshall used to be innocent, only to have it all shattered in the worst way possible. He'd surely never be the same again. As much as Chase hated to say it, he was no leader. Such a title could only be capable to Rocky, the one dog who had held them together the best he could. He didn't blame Zuma for what he did, almost believing his life was worth ending. He could barely imagine what Sky would think of all this, and he wondered if killing her was more a mercy than putting her through horrors. With Rubble carrying Vrock's malice from the beginning, if he never got out of there, Chase would shudder at the bulldog as he came across. Emerging into the clearing, the burned shepherd looked around at the old memories of his life dance in his head. Each step of his paw cracked and sizzled above the ash-covered floor, stenches of melted rubber and plaster making him grimace. There was nothing left down there, just an empty tomb of broken hearts. The sooner he found the vent opening, the sooner he would escape this nightmare. Sure enough, limping through the room, he finally found a vent cover loosely fastened. He had found his escape. Trying to show me up again? Chase stopped in his tracks, recognizing the voice all too well. Taking a long sigh, Chase had lowered his head a little as he felt a burning gaze on his back. Walking through the ash and debris, Zuma emerged with a cold expression on his face. "You always were hard to get rid of," he admitted, with a sigh drip of admiration, only for it to be quickly swallowed up with spite. Still his back turned, Chase searched for words to say, but he couldn't find anything to say. "What are you?" Zuma squinted his eyes, looking at the burned dog up and down. "How did we even get here?" he said, looking out at the ruined basement floor. "Everything's gone, turned to ash, and whose fault is that?" Now Chase turned to face him, sternless in his eyes. "Yours," he said simply. "You're the one who destroyed the lookout." "I did what needed to be done," the lab argued. "Burned down our home maybe, but look around you. It fried the infection and killed Vrock's malice," he declared with a fantastical victory, a grin creeping on his face. "The only thing I have left to get rid of is you, whatever you are." "You," Chase said with a shaky breath. "No, you're not allowed to talk," Zuma suddenly growled, bristling his fur. "Because all that's ever come out of your mouth is lies." He swiped his paw in rage, kicking a piece of wood. His voice slowly lowered, speaking calmly, yet the rage was still too clear. "Maybe a lie I could get behind, and we could have all made mistakes," he admitted, "but you're a murderer, and killing a member of our family, well, I don't think I could ever get behind that." It was then that Chase understood. You're here to kill me, aren't you?" The lab was unresponsive, yet his eyes flickered to meet Chase's gaze, and quiet standoff between the two of them. "So that's it," the shepherd chuckled darkly. "Kill your own brother, and that's the end of the Paw Patrol?" "You're not my brother," Zuma suddenly shouted, snapping in anger. "In a matter of fact, I really don't know what you are. You're not the dog I spent 10 years with." He shook his head. "You're not Chase." Even in his own anger, Chase couldn't deny how much he agreed with those words. Sighing to himself, his hostility faded away, leaving him nothing but a broken shell. As letting him get himself back in, his burned wounds cracked in the process he moved. His ears flashed. Only he could confirm Zuma's word. "You're right," he finally confessed, a faint smile emitting from him. I don't even know who I am anymore." Tears ran down his cheeks, hissing as they passed over one of his blisters. He had tried to fight enough sadness to the static and the shame, but now he realized never could. "Nothing," he whimpered. "Nothing will ever be the same." He looked back at Zuma, now unable to control the emotion leaking from his eyes. I'm sorry, Zuma." The lab flattened slightly, raising an eyebrow. "I'm sorry," Chase wept, "for ruining all of it." Heeding the words, Zuma averted his eyes to the ground, pondering over his choices in the situation. He had won, although he didn't expect how easily he achieved it. A part of the lab wanted Chase to remain defiant, allowing him to further bask in the satisfaction of exposing a monster hiding within his friend. But Chase wasn't a monster, he was a puppy. A sad puppy who made terrible mistakes and was being eaten alive inside. Perhaps the old police dog in the past still remained within him, but Zuma wasn't interested in the answer to that question. Something about Chase's accountability only made him angrier. We've done a lot, haven't we? The lab leaned back a little. We solved problem after problem, saved the town and city more than we could count. He then came forward, all really remembering the key moment from their time in Adventure City. Yet somehow, it always comes back to you, he said with spite in his tongue. What makes you so much more special than us, Chase? It's always you up front, speaking for the squad and the dogs like me in the back. For the longest time, Zuma remained the underdog of the team. Within a few times he was called on a few missions. It was always Chase, Marshall, or even Rocky who sat in the pedestals. Meanwhile, Zuma and sometimes Rebel were simply left at home. His grudge of being underused wasn't exactly important to their situation, but now he needed a moment to alone with that remained of their leader. It was going to be addressed. Even now facing death, Zuma spat the last word. It's you who tries to control us, direct us like fucking puppets. Well, we did it. He laughed erratically. We followed your word and obey every little command you gave us. He darkened, leering at Chase with gritted teeth. Are you proud of where your leadership took us? Sky and Rebel dead, Marshall traumatized, and Rocky struggling to keep his own sanity? You know I never would agree with me on my plan to incinerate the tower, but of course you wouldn't, he grinned, wagging his tail slowly. No tower means no Paw Patrol, and once that's gone, there's no one left for you to control. The shepherd froze in horror, backing up slightly. Zuma, that's not true. No, it is, the lab defied. I'm more of a leader than you were, and I'll make them see that, he emitted a low growl. Whatever it takes to fix what you destroyed. To see his old friend kept acting on such an ambition was horrific, breaking Chase's heart further than he imagined. He had seen a lot and dealt with terrible things, but this was something else. He couldn't let Zuma hurt his friends. A crying fire surged within him, screaming up to Chase though he couldn't die now. He had to go back and make sure they were all okay. Chase shook his head and blinded by his own emotion and panic. I just wanted to keep you all safe, keep you all happy. You want us to be happy? Zuma challenged. We won't be happy until you're gone, and I fix everything. Breathing heavily and ignoring his body pain, Chase slowly stood up, narrowing his eyes as he curled his lips against the patches of exposed flesh bearing his teeth. I will not let you do that. Zuma only fell silent, oddly staring down at the shepherd as he spoke again. His voice dropped of any emotion. I know you won't. The lab suddenly embraced his own embrace down his rage, pushing away his morals and lunged at Chase's throat, calling forth his feral instinct from so long ago. The small smoking room exploded into a violent conflict between both dogs colliding into one another as their friendship withered away. Claws and teeth snapped and swiped in all directions, both animals fully intending to maintain one another. Being German Shepherd, Chase was stronger, although his severe burns had weakened him. Zuma was lighter, and his species was not known for fighting, until he utilized every drip of his effectiveness and sped in to evade Chase's frenzied attack. As the sound of snarls and battle cries bounced off the walls, Chase thrust his head forward in an attempt to grab the feral Labrador. Quickly jumping to his side, Zuma rolled off the ground as his friend passed over him. Now behind his foe, he jumped into the air and landed on Chase's back, instantly gripping his teeth into the shepherd's burned scruff and yanking it in all directions. Drops of blood and flesh slowly tore off one by one as Zuma mauled to him, Chase howling as he tried to shake him off. In a swift motion, Chase threw himself into the charred wall, crushing Zuma under it, causing a breath to escape the lab, forcing him to release his teeth. Quickly Chase buckled his legs, tossing the lab off balance and making him lower his head as he tried to keep himself up. Now it was Zuma who screamed as Chase whipped his head around, catching his own teeth in Zuma's neck and ripping him down to the floor. The lab collided with the ground, an audible slam echoing through the room as he snarled and raged with every claw he had, leaving a red gashes on his attacker's face. Ignoring the pain, Chase rushed to his teeth and his brother's neck as deep as they would go, using his own claws brutally hack away at Zuma's belly. Each swipe of his arm tore into the lower dog, first swiping off brown clumps of fire. Then his claws suddenly ran red as swipes of blood were ripped out. He released Zuma with a painful howl as his lab managed to knock him off, punching his paws across Chase's eyes. As the shepherd staggered away, Zuma struggled to stand up as agonizing groans of pain left his muzzle. His neck was matted and red, and large streams of blood were leaking from his belly. Fighting against his own injuries, Chase kept his breathing steady while locking eyes with his opponent. With brewing fire, they circled each other, Chase's ears suddenly picking up noise from the ceiling. Glancing upward, he could faintly hear something moving above, likely in the vents. He knew the sound too well, and his eyes widened at the realization that they weren't alone. Even in the darkest hour, Chase couldn't help but laugh, letting out a slow chuckle slip out right at his brother's face. "What the hell are you laughing at?" Zuma stumbled backwards, his body leaving streams of red on the floor. Chase gave him a wide yet hopeless smile. "You failed, Zuma. It's still alive." "What?" The chocolate lab froze, sneaking up to look up at the ceiling, clenching his claws as he shook his head and turned back to his target. "Whatever. After I'll kill you, I'll deal with it." "Forget the fighting. We're supposed to be in this together," the shepherd said, wincing from the searing scratches all over him. "Zuma, we've all done some terrible things, but that doesn't mean it has to come down to this," he pleaded with his lifelong co-worker. "If you want to beat the hell out of me, you can. You deserve to have that moment, but we could still get out of this. Both of us." "It's too late for that," Zuma shouted, fiercely sprinting at him again, with a snarl of fierce hatred. He bared his teeth and plunged for any possible opening. He was met in the middle, Chase putting his paws forward and intercepting the Labrador, clashing them together and briefly locking in their arms in the barking, snarlless mess. The creature above them began to audibly move faster, responding to the noises of a broken family, ripped apart by tragedy. A rush of adrenaline allowed Chase to violently shove Zuma off, flipping him to the side as he shifted his weight. The thinner dog hit the floor and instantly rolled back to his paws, darting his amber eyes to the floor. He spotted a small blunt pipe, likely broken off from the explosion. Wasting no time flipping it into the air and grabbing him by his teeth, he wielded it like a blunt weapon. Now Chase faltered in surprise as he took a step back, taken off guard. Still, the shepherd tried to get through to him. "Zuma, don't you understand? Farok's malice is practically laughing at us right now. This is exactly what it wanted, to tear us all apart." "You fucking gaslighter," the lab spat. "Don't pin your own crimes on that thing. It did enough, but you're still the one who ruined everything." Chase took a deep step back, blood dripping from his face. "That's not what I meant. I'm not saying it was responsible for everything. I'm saying that if we don't stick together, we'll never be rid of it," he barked. "It wants us to kill each other. We're sabotaging ourselves by doing so." "Then maybe we have something in common, it and I," said the Coast Guard, as he dragged the pipe along the ground. Zuma had never used a weapon before, as noted by his sloppy form of swinging as hard as he jumped at Chase. The shepherd winced as he stumbled aside, and quickly as he could, dodging the swing as he stumbled on the floor. Surging with ferocity, Zuma instantly swung back in the opposite direction, his own body getting carried by the weight of the swing. There was no window to evade the attack, and Chase winced as he held up his arm in a feeble attempt to defend himself. The blunt metal slammed against his body, knocking him backwards and making him yell at the white-hot pain that paralyzed his arm. Dazed and mouth sore from holding the metal, Zuma shook his head as he dragged the pipe along the floor, watching his old leader stumble against the edge of the room. Even as his small body was beginning to buckle under his spent energy, the Labrador snarled as he held up the pipe in his mouth, bringing it for another, a lackluster swing. Acting in the flash, Chase jumped forward and caught the pipe within his paws, intercepting the attack and locking the weapon between them. Zuma staggered as the shockwave hit him, nearly breaking a few of his teeth. Then his head shot backward as the shepherd's paws punched his nose. The pipe then dropped and hit the dusty floor. Chase leaping down and grabbing the lab's paw in his teeth before he could fall back, pulling Zuma right back in. He embraced his claws as it tore through the lab's already wounded belly, tearing it up even more than before. His opponent tried to scream, but every sound was muffled by the shock as he was ripped into. By the time he pulled his paw free, Zuma was already a wounded mess. His stomach was shredded, raining blood in that way that flooded the floor. His paws and face were torn into, sending powerful agony through him. Furiously growling, Chase stumbled back as his hold was broken, narrowing his eyes as he watched the lab move. With next to nothing left, Zuma grimaced his pain as he limped over, his hatred being the only left thing to carry him as his body couldn't. But hatred in the way of taking him more than it gave, and Zuma tried to attack, although his form and speed were greatly hindered. Chase stopped right then and there as it was happened, grabbing Zuma's mangled paw in his teeth and yanking it forward. The Labrador let out a squeak as his body tumbled onto the floor like broken glass. Breathing heavily as blood escaped him, Zuma slowly looked up, fighting his pain for everything left to fuel him. Taking a final stand, the lab staggered back up. Instantly, Chase's claws met Zuma's face, tearing into his eye and nose, and the attack finished it. The force of the impact throwing Zuma back into the ground, and this time he didn't get up. Watching his brother fall, Chase breathed heavily as the fight ended, his blistered body reprimanding him for the aggressive moment. The Labrador was subdued, and the shepherd's attack was meant to incapacitate him. As such strategy of going for the eyes, even the other was intended to fight to the death. Chase's heart only broke at the sudden sight of Zuma broken on the floor. The fight left him, his ears and tail lowered, his face from the expression of utter sorrow. Struggling to stand, Zuma writhed on the floor, snarling and writhing as he was covered in cuts, breathing sporadically. He looked up at his adversary. A hateful expression closed his face, yet there was a faint glimmer of something else. So, he fought to get out of flexing his own bloodied brown paws. "Is this it? You're going to kill me too?" He let out a red grin peel across his face, baring his broken teeth and cut gums. "Do it then. We have nothing left anyway." Shifting in his own blood, the lab let out a long bubbling sigh. "The Paw Patrol is gone, torn apart within it, so finish it." If Chase had a silver urges to kill the Labrador, they were history by now. In the fight, he acted in defense, swiftly bringing the lab down as his own drive carried him past his body in agony. But for every second he spent staring at his fallen brother, only sadness was met in return. After a long moment, Chase shook his head. "No, I'm not going to do that to you." "What?" Zuma said, almost a genuine surprise. "You have to. Didn't you hear a word I said? You have to." A groan erupted in him, pain coursing through his frame. "You have to finish what you've started, right?" The question hung in the air, but the shepherd merely looked away. The musty air of burned room was filled with griefs from both sides, a clashing bloody teeth and claw ending, with only sorrow and regret. Chase could see it now. The Paw Patrol was truly gone. No matter what he tried to tell himself, something about the revelation brought an odd flicker of peace to his heart. "I already have," Chase said, a tear running down his face. "Goodbye, Zuma." He turned his back on the lab, returning to the event gate on the wall. His brother's voice shouted in alarm. "What? No! Get back here!" Chase gripped his paws along the edge of the vent gate, beginning to tug it free. "Chase! You won't leave me here! You're a killer just like the rest!" The shepherd swiftly gave a final tug, successfully pulling it off the wall, and providing access to the vents inside. "Think of Ryder, damn it!" "Ryder?" Chase merely chuckled as he dipped his head down and climbed into the vents, his paws crossing over from the burnt tile onto the sheet metal. "Chase!" The call fell on deaf ears as the shepherd vanished into the narrow corridors, and the tip of his tail finally disappearing away. Zuma watched it go with a horrible sinking feeling. He realized he was alone, completely abandoned and left behind. A fate worse than death. "Chase!" he shouted, as loud as he possibly could, but there was no response. His enemy had escaped. as well as all of his friends and family. Everything had failed with the shot to his gut that bled down in perfectionism. Everything was written to plan, yet he was the one who suffered alone and abandoned. Looking around helplessly, he couldn't believe his own situation. "No," he muttered simply. His breathing went shaky, and he reached a paw forward in an effort to crawl. Then he remembered how injured it was, his mangled body unable to move. Growling, Zuma refused to bleed out, undergo one more could find him. He had to get back. Fighting his pain, he reached forward again, his eyes locked on the vent opening. A large gloved hand suddenly dipped down from his view, flexing its 5 razor-sharp claws. The wrist was fastened with the arm's shreds of burned veins and intestine. Reeking a smell of burnt flesh, Zuma's breathing stopped. Its heart skipped a beat as the sound of animalistic growling emitted from him. With nowhere to go, the lab helplessly looked behind him, terrified of what he would see. Varrock's malice was beyond pissed off. Its wormy organ-like body showed its blistering and burns. It had likely found somewhere to hide in the explosion, although not without suffering a few of its own injuries. What locked Zuma's expression and nearly stopped his pulse was the creature's face. The skin mask it wore, the only thing giving Varrock's malice a resemblance to a dog, was completely gone, likely burned off instead of still wearing it. The creature simply discarded away as true face. Underneath it would haunt Zuma the final seconds of his life. It had no ears or nose, and the features that only mask possessed instead of Varrock's malice itself as its head was composed of bloody pink flesh, with visible fangs and moving worm-like appendages moving around it. With its mask on, the large clumps of eyes that dotted its face were now revealed. In addition to its 2 main eyes, its several least more infested in its head than various areas. Its chin, cheeks, and even the sides of its muzzle had bloodshot eye peeking out, all staring down at Zuma. Its mouth was locked in a permanent snarl, its full jaw now exposed as a line of juddering fangs. Tentacles hung down from the back of its head, moving in the air with the rest of him. Varrock's malice was never a dog to begin with, only a vile, crooked monster who sadistically wore the skin of one. Overcome with fear, Zuma panicked and ran, turning to a random hallway and fleeing for his life through the ashes. Varrock's malice could be heard hissing behind him, watching him run and then screech into the air, and its pounding footsteps rushed down in seconds. Zuma could barely get another few feet of distance before a tentacle clamped around his leg, yanking the puppy off the floor and flinging him into the wall. With a slamming impact, his body collided with the surface and fell to the ground. A shock bursting pain flashed through him. "Ah!" he shrieked, stumbling to a stop. "Ah!" His vision clouded over from his mind, his spinning. Unable to push himself up, the lab sat on the floor stunned, waiting for the ringing to leave his ears. Like a looming hunter, Varrock's malice appeared on his side, walking sideways to his view and crouching down to meet him. Zuma's breathing quickened, his face spreading with terror, as a wordless panic left his muzzle. Helpless to run, the lab sat paralyzed in horror as Varrock's malice stared him down, squatting low with the only mere inches between them. His voice could only perform panicked whimpers, unable to create words under the pressuring stare of the maskless monster. Watching him for a moment, Varrock's malice began unhinging its jaws, emitting a rising growl, and flexing its claws. Zuma's whimpers carefully intensified, his cries increasing in volume. Boiling in anger, the creature roared out with full voice, roaring into the puppy's face. The last sound Zuma ever made was only a split-second scream, shrieking so loud as his vocal cords felt like they could tear, only to be silenced for an instant as Varrock's malice lunged into him. Crawling through the vents of the lookout, Chase hurried as much as he could. He shuffled his body through the dark passageways with his only family in mind. He saw a light up ahead briefly, bringing hope into the dogs as he quickened his pace, approaching in the exit of the vent. Chase excitedly peeked out, only for his joy to dim as he realized that was just another room. "Great," he grumbled, getting agitated with the complexity of the basement. Looking around, he only saw the massive furnace connected to several pipes along the walls, Some tables were stacked against the wall and various objects littered the room. Chase rolled his eyes and turned away when he suddenly stopped, cold and freezing halt, as he suddenly remembered. The boiler room. He had found it. Amidst the terror and fear, Chase had almost entirely forgotten this room even existed, the core location he was trying to get to from the very beginning. In a foolish action, he had discarded his gun and the ACG radio with any of these walls, and he could finally get them back. Exploding into movement, Chase turned and climbed out of the vent, finally returning to the boiler room and stepped out. His heart pounded as he darted his gaze around. Triumph finally reaching his objective was almost sending him to a frenzy. Then he stopped. His gaze fell upon the soul that remained trapped within Sky. A haunting breath. Chase couldn't move as he spotted her. At first she looked alive, merely sleeping on the metal table, and for a moment he was attempting to call her name. The cockapoo lay motionless, rigor mortis already settling in to lock up her limbs as her eyes dulled. She was long dead, merely cast into the tomb that was the lookout. Averting his eyes, although he couldn't hide from the guilt and shame that now hung over him, he took the ground and trailed his nose, searching for his lost belongings. He kept this in mind forward, but the haunted memory of the murderer and the lookout constantly crept up him. He finally found his gun, bullets still within it, sitting on the floor under the table where it was tossed. Upon picking up, Chase realized that he had no way of effectively holding it. His pup pack was long gone, yet he couldn't remember when he lost it. If it wasn't thrown into the explosion, then it would have lost sometime later in another attack. Lowering his ears in a whimper, he knew it'd be foolish to leave a weapon behind, especially now. With no other option, he made sure the safety was on and nestled the gun in his collar, the plastic strap firmly holding it despite the burns around it. Ryder had made them well. The feeling of the metal on his neck was uncomfortable, not to mention the anxiety of having a weapon so close to him. He also found the blood reader sitting on the floor, the one device that was supposed to save them all, yet a single misused doomed item. Chase then felt shame, looking down and kicked it away in the ash where it would never be found again. The ACG radio was uncovered a few feet away, and to Chase's delight it was still intact. Holding up the small device, he was suddenly filled with certainty. What if he did something wrong? What if they couldn't hear him? What if they weren't in Venture Bay anymore? Cyrus and the other dogs had long packed up their things and vanished? Even then, he was still out of options. Chase hit the button on the center, and a blinking green light turned on, a signal that was activated. "Hello?" He spoke into it, half expecting a reply. "Can anyone hear me?" The radio only responded with static. No sign of an answer from the other side. The shepherd let out a sigh, already expecting this. "This is Chase. Was once the Paw Patrol lookout. Look, I don't know if anyone can hear me, but we found it," he reported. "I mean, hell, Varrock's Malice is really here. It's been here for who knows how long. We fought in the basements, and we all got out, except for one of us. We also picked up Liberty from the Archline Foundation. I don't know if it's important." He sighed into the device. "This animal, this creature, is nothing that belongs in the world. If you can hear me, send the artillery or whatever you have. It's mutated far out of control." He shrugged with all right. "Mate, that's all." He let the radio fall out of his paw, plucking it on the ground. He turned back to Sky, still lying on the table. Shaking his head, he knew to face his crimes and death, although he had other matters to attend to now. He was attempted to place her in the furnace, gifting her with final rite of cremation. However, the explosion stole all that fuel away and ruptured the gas pipes, leaving burning machine unusable. Turning around, he spotted the elevator doors that led to the rest of the tower. The power was beyond doubt, yet the damage the tower received gave Chase an idea. The doors were cracked and slightly bent inward, allowing the shepherd to climb through them and emerge into the dark elevator corridor that only led upward. Surrounded by dead machinery, looking up, he could see the elevator, still stuck on the main floor as it was pinned by debris and rubble, unable to move. Gripping the dangling cords and chains, Chase had already steadily climbed upwards. He was thankful for that moment that Ryder was teaching him how to climb during his police training. Emerging through the broken hole in the elevator, Chase climbed up to the main floor of the tower on the ground level. Looking around, the tower was completely unrecognizable compared to what it used to be. He was technically outside, but the explosion had leveled the tower, causing the main observation deck to fall and crash to the ground. Even with the catapony of broken metal above him, the grass floor was unmistakable, and Chase greatly enjoyed placing the paw in the cool ground outside after all the time underground. Light peered through the slits and crevices of the metal, signaling that it was no longer dark outside. The sunrise was just beginning. He never felt happier, crawling through that wreckage and poking his head out into the fresh air. He could never take anything for granted again. The sight of the trees and fields had never been so beautiful. The kennels still stood in circles around the fallen tower, although Zuma's had been smashed under debris. He was finally outside. He escaped. There were no words to describe how amazing the sun felt on his fur. After hours of dark cold from the basement, no more machinery, no more disgusting gore, no more infection, just a warm orange sky and bright green grass to embrace him. Taking a deep breath and inhale of fresh outside air, he felt his body pain ease from the rays of the warm sun. Although there was no time for sunbathing, he still had to reunite with the others and flee the hospital. Then a voice met his ears, panicked and feminine. "How am I supposed to know? I'm not going back down there." He turned his head to the direction of the sound, then immediately started to walk. He was about to call out to the voice when he listened more intently. "You didn't tell me it would be anything like this." Chase stopped, narrowing his as he listened. Crouching down low, he began to creep forward with reduced noise, darting back close to the massive pile of debris and metal that was once a tower. He used the jutting pieces over his cover. As he approached the speaker, peeking out from his cover, he spotted Liberty standing in the clearing. "Can't you just come and get me?" the dachshund argued in their collar. "I almost died several times." "And why would I do that?" hissed an icy voice coming through. "You have not only met failure that was promised with success, but you have literally jeopardized everything in the Archline Foundation intended to do. So why should I give you anything?" The sight of Liberty talking to the radio made Chase furious, as he firmly remembered she had never had a caller during that time in the basement. Neither she hid it away, or so no one would see, or possibly that made Chase's blood boil. She'd taken off of Marshall or Rocky. Growling, he crouched down to listen. Who was she speaking to? "Dutch, can you just leave? You can't just leave me here," came her plea. "I could get all four of them, I promise." "How many promises do you intend to convince me of? It's most disappointing to see my investment turn up empty." "Look, I just need more help. Do you think you could order Captain Cyrus to come and assist me? I'm sure Chase and Zuma are still down here. Dutch's voice came through with a snarl. "That's not their job, Liberty. I hired them to bring back the creature once it's achieved with full evolution. And now you tell me my prized bioweapon is gone?" "No, it's not gone," Liberty said, her voice breaking into a plea. "Not all of it, at least. Like I said, Chase and Zuma are still down there." "Well, do you have them?" No, but I can." She clenched her radio tightly, her legs shaking. The voice on the other side of the line was less than pleased. "Too much has gone into the project for you to wreck it all in a single night. Next time I hear your voice, you better have pleasant news, or I'm leaving you down there." Chase came up from behind Liberty. "Who were you talking to?" "Ah!" The smaller dog spun around in surprise, startled as she spiked with her singed fur, and the sight of the outburst shepherd nearly topped her, and very audible click could be heard from her radio. The other caller had immediately hung up the line. "Chase, you're..." she stuttered in disbelief. "Who were you talking to? How are you..." "Who are you talking to?" Chase said with a growl, taking a step closer to her. Hey, Liberty recoiled fearful, taking a defensive step back. "Back off." Chase wasn't having it. "Where are the others?" "I said back off," she snarled, baring her teeth. "I have a knife." A knife. She had been armed this whole time, finishing her with her games. Chase quickly sat back and pulled it from the gun to his collar. Liberty's eyes went wide, all of her defiance gone in a snap. Upon spotting the much more lethal weapon, fear spread throughout her as she stared down at the barrel of the gun. "Talk," he hissed, pointing at the weapon between her eyes. His captive flickered her eyes to the side, looking for a way out, yet there was none. Realizing she was caught, Liberty was angry and emitted a growl, only to sigh in defeat. Narrowing her eyes, she fluttered her fur for a little in an attempt to maintain her composure. She met with Chase's fiery gaze. "Fine, just get the gun out of my face," Liberty tried bargaining, growling increasingly agitated the longer the weapon was pointed at her. Despite her qualms, Chase was in no mood. "Say something, like, and maybe I will." When he said no reason for her to trust her anymore, a betrayal that will only insult to injury, he was forced to deal with Zuma. He was exhausted, distressed, and trying with every fabric of his mind to try and ignore the blistering pain all over his body. Such under circumstances, Liberty was out of seconds. His captive glanced to the side, visible frustration peeling around her. It was obvious that she was nodding something, and the gears in her head, turning for an explanation while the sun slowly rose in the distance. Looking up at him, and her voice went cold. "Barack's malice never escaped," she confessed. "It was released."